What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been, yet again, quite some time since I've made another video, and I just realized today, after promising to tell you guys, and reveal the new bike to the channel, it's been like 42 days. So I guess time really flies when you're having fun, and I've just been enjoying this bike so much that I just haven't really gotten around to making another video. So I apologize for that. Super sorry. We're going to get some onboard footage with this bike really soon. But for now, I'm just going to kind of do this quick unedited video as best as I can, unedited. And we're going to show you guys the bike, show you what I got here, and hopefully you guys enjoy. I know a lot of the, original subscribers to this channel are probably going to be super stoked about this bike. I'm still super stoked with this bike. I love it. I think it's the best bike that I've owned, period. I have no plans of getting rid of this thing. I've said that in the past. I know, but I promise you guys, when you see this thing, you're going to understand. It's perfect. All right, guys, here she is. This is none other than the original, the OG KTM Super Duke 990. This here is a 2007. I picked this thing up privately for pretty cheap. I got it cheaper basically than what I was able to sell my Rebel 500 for. So, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better deal than that. Had quite a few miles on it. It was at 28,000, somewhere just over that when I first got it. Now it is just over 31,000, I believe. So let's go ahead. We'll take a look at the dash and we'll verify all that really quick. But so far, it's been a pretty flawless bike. I've just been doing routine maintenance things to it, even if I didn't really need to. So that's just the trip meter. We'll go through here. So that's external temperature. There we go. So 31,304 miles on it currently. And I mean, it's running spectacularly. So no complaints there. Really quick, before I go ahead and turn it back off, I did put an H4 LED bulb in there. I need to get a matching one for the top there because that's still a halogen, but it's not really a big deal because that LED kind of drowns that halogen out really well. Also, I had to replace the two front turn signals. They were slowly kind of falling apart. They were cracking in areas and they'd flop down. I'd super glue it back together, but it would just crack in a different place later on. The front turn signals were still original, so it's no surprise that they were kind of falling apart. The previous owner actually replaced the rear ones shortly before I bought it, so those have been flawless so far. And there's the tail section here for you guys. We'll go over the exhaust here momentarily, but yeah, I mean, overall, it's a super beautiful bike. It's super clean. When I picked it up from the guy, I mean, there's oil here and there and all types of stuff, but the body was just immaculate. No scrapes, no scratches, no super bad wear or anything like that. Let me go ahead and turn that off before the battery dies or anything like that, which we'll also go over here shortly. Some issues I had there. But so basically I picked this thing up and on my first ride with it, I didn't really test ride it before I purchased it, which is always not really a good idea, but that's what I did. I kind of went out to the guy's house, looked it over, looked for leaks, and like I said, the body looked clean. There was just oil kind of on the swing arm and stuff from it just not being cleaned up very well between lubrication and stuff like that. So nothing super out of the ordinary or anything I was super concerned about. But when I rode it to work from this guy's house, and it rode kind of rough. And 2 days later, I filled it up with a fresh tank of gas, and it completely cleaned up. Just rode completely smooth from that point forward, and couldn't have been more happy with it at that point. Now, let's go over some things that I've done with the bike since I've got it. So, routine maintenance stuff. Obviously, first thing I did was I changed the oil, and it's just like any other KTM. There's a few screens, an oil filter, Unique thing about this bike is it's actually a dry sump bike. So this is actually the oil container, and this is where you check your oil level. Now you're supposed to check this bike when it's warm because the oil will expand when it's warm. So it's cold right now, so you're not really going to see it because of the way the bike is leaning on the stand and everything right now. But that's how you check your oil level, or oil level, my bad. There's a minimum maximum line there. And then he also did the Oberon clutch slave cylinder upgrade, so I didn't have to worry about that. It also has their backing plate upgrade on there as well. And as you can see, it's not in bad condition. It's a little dirty, I haven't gotten around to really cleaning the engine up so much as I've done like just, you know, the frame and the swing arm and stuff like that. But yeah, did a routine oil change on it. The coolant in there is pretty clean, and so I'm not really planning on doing a flush with the coolant or anything quite yet. Routine maintenance after that was I threw on a fresh set of tires. The bike came with Pirelli Diablo Rosso 3s when I picked it up, and I was super unimpressed with the tires. The guy said he only had them on there for about 2,000 miles before I picked it up, and they only lasted maybe another 1,000 miles before the rear was like almost about to show cords. So I was not impressed with the lifespan on them, and I wasn't impressed with the feedback and the grip. So I went ahead and I picked up these Shinko Verge 11s, and they are pretty cheap when it comes to the price. Just give you a view of them right there. So I did some research, couldn't find out a whole lot about these tires. I did see some good reviews about them, and a lot of people were like, man, the handling on these things is freaky, mainly in a good way, because they're very, how do I put this, input sensitive. And most of that is due to the nature of the front tire's shape, which is not really like as aggressive as it was, you know, 2,000 miles ago when they were brand new. But the front tire kind of comes up to more of a point. And what that does is it makes the bike, you know, eager to lean into turns. And it makes it handle just awesome. Like these tires, fresh out of the box, amazing. And they still are amazing, even with 2,000 miles on them. And if you notice, like going back to the rear tire here, I know it's kind of dark, but this thing, like, it doesn't even look barely worn. Like there's so much meat still left in here. Like look how deep this tread still has here. So these are going to last a pretty good while. I've heard that you can get about anywhere between 8 to 10,000 miles out of them from some other reports, so pretty stoked with that. So really good tires. I put a new set of rear brake pads on because the rear brakes, they're not that good, and the pads made a little bit of difference, but I think it's just, you know, the rear brakes on most bikes aren't anything spectacular anyways, but I put a new set of pads on there, and the rear brakes feel a little bit better now. I put new chain and sprockets on here. So we have JT front and rear sprockets. They're just OEM sizing. And then we got a brand new DID chain as well. I just finished cleaning this thing up a little bit because I'm getting ready to re-lube it. But those have been on there almost as long as the tires now, and it's been flawless. Outside of maintenance, I picked up the Dominator exhaust here. That comes from Poland, and it's like the cheapest exhaust you can find for this bike. Like, you're not going to find anything cheaper for this bike. You can't, like, don't even plan on picking one of these up unless you want to spend money, is all I'm going to tell you. But that is, like, as cheap as you can get, and it's not even, you know, Chinese quality. There are no Chinese exhausts for this bike, thank God, because I wouldn't want anybody to ruin this thing. But that's the cheapest exhaust you can get. It's under $400, I'll just say that. Next thing I did was I put a K&N air filter in the airbox as well. So just got rid of the OEM filter, which was not in rough shape. Past that, I changed out the spark plugs, which if you ever do pick up one of these bikes, or any Super Duke for that matter, no matter the year, the rear plug, pretty easy to get to. You just pop off the seat, you can come in from the top, take the coil pack out, and get to the plug pretty easy. The front one though, yeah, it's way back in there somewhere. Easiest way to get to it on this bike is actually from this side. So you take the panel out. It's also advisable that you lift the tank, which is pretty easy. You only have to take the two side panels off, and then there's one bolt for the tank right there. And then the tank actually has a gas strut, which you can kind of see up in this area, I think. Maybe not. Can't really see it. But it has a gas strut to help it stay in the up position, which is really nice, as long as the tank is not full of gas. And you do want to drain the tank, or at least have it fairly low before you lift that thing up, or else gas will start spilling out of orifices that it shouldn't come out of. Keep that in mind. So went ahead and bought a Tune, well, not a Tune per se, but I bought the Tune ECU cables and software. So there's actually an app for Android, or you can use the PC version, but I think the PC version's outdated right now. So I have the app on my phone, And then you can plug into the ECU directly using a USB-C adapter to the OBD adapter and all that. And I was able to put a new tune on the bike. And the tune was done over like in Austria by somebody who has pretty much just an exhaust on their bike. And they made like 123 horsepower and I think 78 foot-pounds of torque to the tire. Now stock, this bike is 120 horsepower and 75 foot-pounds of torque, and that's not to the tire. So when you think about it, I think this bike actually picked up somewhere around 12 wheel horsepower, and I want to say like 8 to 10 foot-pounds of torque at the tire. So that's pretty good. What else can I say about it? I did replace this foot peg over here as well, which is nothing special. It's just another OEM one. Because the rubber on my original one was pretty worn down to the point where it was getting to the metal underneath. I do still plan on cleaning up the engine as best as I can here in the future. I also had to fix an exhaust leak that I had down here. The graphite ring seal was completely blown out, like it just didn't exist. With the tune, it has the O2 sensors disabled and also the secondary air system disabled as well. So if you see this thing right here, this is part of the secondary air system. There's one on the front cylinder on the other side of the bike as well. And what those do is on deceleration and other situations, they pump fresh air from the airbox into the exhaust port. And what that does is burn unburnt fuel in the exhaust system. So from the factory, the bikes actually have kind of like a pop and a burble to them, even with the factory exhaust. And it helps keeps the catalytic converter warm and heated up. And keeps the catalytic converter a little more clean. Well, the catalytic converter is now deleted because it's actually built into the OEM exhaust system, which is right here. So this is like all the muffler and OEM exhaust, crap. And that thing is like pretty freaking heavy. I would have to say it's probably at least in the 15 to 20 pound range, somewhere around there. And this exhaust only weighs like, I don't know, maybe 5 pounds, 5 or 6 pounds, I think was on the shipping label with the box. So it's already dropped a good, 10 or 15 pounds right there with the exhaust. This bike does weigh right around 430 pounds factory, and I can't remember if that's the dry or the wet weight, but now it's dropped a little bit of weight with that. So we'll say this bike probably weighs somewhere in the 440-ish pounds wet as it sits right now. Other than that, I mean, the bike has been running really, really good, like, especially since I took care of a little bit, of the maintenance stuff. One other thing, like I was talking about with the battery, I went ahead and I bought a new battery because I thought I was having issues with it, like getting a full charge. And what was happening is every time the bike would get warm enough that the fan would come on, the bike would start to kind of like, idle a little rough. Almost like it wasn't getting enough voltage to the rest of the system, like to keep the fuel pump running where it needed to be, to keep the spark going, all that kind of thing. So I started doing some investigation and I was like, oh, maybe it's just the battery. I'll start with that. So I ordered a battery, went to go put it in. Unfortunately, the battery tab was broken, but I put the old battery on the charger, and even before I put it on the charger, it actually checked out fine. So I was like, no, something else is wrong here. So I looked up how to test the stator and the regulator rectifier, and the stator checked out perfectly normal, and the regulator rectifier actually passed the test as well. There was a tiny bit of variation with the pins on the regulator rectifier, but nothing like that should have been out of the ordinary. So what I did was I started with the cheapest part, which the regulator rectifier I think was like $40. So I bought that, replaced it, and lo and behold, now the bike runs perfectly. Because what was happening before was I noticed when I was running Tune ECU, and I can see the battery voltage, what would happen is I would start the bike and it would idle. The battery would be around like 13.2 to 13.8 volts, and it would just sit there and go up and down and up and down and up and down. And when I revved the bike, the battery voltage dropped. It didn't go up, it dropped to like, I think 13.1 volts, and it never, like, I started giving the bike more and more revs and it wouldn't go up. So it's supposed to go up when you rev the bike, at least to like 14 volts, 14.2 volts, when everything's operating the way it should. So I think what ended up happening is that the terminals on the old regulator rectifier that connect into the stator just got a little corroded because it was pretty dirty down there. I think they got a little corroded and things just weren't getting the proper like voltage and amperage to run through the system to keep the battery charged the way it was supposed to be. Now that I've replaced that, it's perfect. Like it idles so much better. Like it just runs smooth as a dream right now. Like I couldn't be more happy with the way that this bike runs right now. It's absolutely amazing. As you can see here, it does have the KTM factory option touring screen on there. And cool thing is that the previous owner gave me this little bag up here, and it actually has all of the receipts from the original owner in it, like all the way back to where he bought it, all the maintenance the original owner did, and the guy that I got it from was the second owner. So the first owner had it till about 15,000 miles, and then the previous owner had it till 28,000 miles, and then I bought it. So it hasn't been through too many hands. And one of the cool things with owning a bike like this is that when you buy a bike that's premium, keep in mind, this bike sold for like $16,000 back in its day. People don't go into buying bikes that cost that much money, especially like in 2007, you know, $16,000 motorcycle. They don't go into that expecting things to be cheap or do things the cheap way. So this bike was maintained very well by the dealership, like pretty incredible stuff. I don't think the previous owner took quite as good a care of it as the first owner, but the first owner did like everything correctly. And it's even had like the valves done and all that good stuff. So it's running like a dream right now. I am in love with this bike. There was somebody who commented on one of my previous videos that was like, oh, you'll never be happy again until you're on another KTM. Well, I guess he was kind of right, because I've never been happier with a motorcycle than I am right now with this bike. It is like the perfect bike, and we'll continue to go over some more things in the future with this bike, with the onboard footage and so on and so forth, any other future mods we may do with it, that kind of thing. And yeah, so stay tuned, guys. I hope you guys are ready to stick around for some KTM Super Duke content. We're going to go on some group rides here in the future. Unfortunately, I have to work this weekend, so I may not get a video out this week. But by next weekend, I'm hoping to get out another video, or maybe during this week on a ride to or from work, I'll do a short little video with you guys on board at least, so you can see what it sounds like and just get my first initial impressions to you guys about owning this fantastic, awesome Super Duke.